Hi guys, it's a pretty sunny day today, and I just wanted to make a quick video on something historic. So I'm quite a big fan of camping, outdoor history, specifically Alpine mountaineering or high altitude mountaineering history. And this is my latest acquisition. It was confirmed to have been on Everest sometime in the 80s, I believe. It's done at least one Everest trip, and again, it's made a couple of trips to the Alps and a few other places. And apart from that, it was just packed away and then not used again, which is why she is in such remarkable condition. There's only a couple of photographs I think I've seen of tents, or this specific tent. This is the ultimate equipment, the tent, which was for a long time, I believe, it went on to be Phoenix, the company, their premier 4-season tent specifically designed for mountaineering use. So it's massively overbuilt in every way. The stitching is all double stitched, super hard wearing tent. And yeah, I managed to get this one for a pretty good price, but she's in really good condition. The only ones I've seen have had significant sun fading along the snow valances, but as you can see, there's literally no sign of any sun fading. And it's pretty much the original colour from what I can see. Of course, the original photographs are all either black and white or very primitive colour film, so it's a little bit hard to tell, but as far as I can tell, it's pretty much in the right colour. So I've just this morning washed this with Nikwax Tech Wash, inner and outer. I then used Nikwax Solar Proof and then Nikwax Waterproofer to bring her back up again. She's come up really nice. So I'll just take a look inside. So it's got a vestibule both ends with a single zipper. I believe the later Phoenix had a double zipper with these 4-season vents, which can be opened and closed from the inside or folded back. And you've got a really nice sized vestibule on each end. I'll demonstrate that once we get to the other end. But the material itself is in really good shape. It was a little bit stiff when it first arrived, but after a wash and a reproof, it's returned to its original sort of flexible shape. There's only one slight issue with it, and that's just here. There's a tiny little hole there, but I can repair that with some Gore-Tex tape, I'm sure. But apart from that, it's really nice. So there's quite a few of these style tents around. The Phoenix, the company, Phoenix Mountaineering, made a fair few of them. I believe I had a Freak a while back, which is a similar A-frame design, but just a single A-frame with a single ridgepole at the front and back. But I wanted to get my hands on a really nice 4-season tent like this from the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s for a long time, but something in a good condition that could still be used. I'm not a personal believer in having these vintage tents that are not usable, because as much as I want to keep them, preserve them for nostalgia and for as a historic piece, I do want to be able to actually use the gear. And so we'll take a look inside. So I've worked out you can, in fact, if you were to have this pegged out like that, you could effectively open one side of the vestibule if you'd want, and create a kind of bit of a windbreak, which is quite useful. Just use 4 of these aluminium poles that run down through here into a loop at the bottom, and then you have this pin that goes into the top. And of course valances all the way around, which I love. My North Face V25 only has valances at the front and the back, and that's the latest model. And even the Mountain Hardwear Trango, the new one, only has valances on the front vestibule, which, they did for a reason, of course, absolutely. But nothing beats having complete snow valances, So inside the vestibule, we have the inner tent. So you do actually have a door. Oh, sorry, there is actually a small burn hole there, but again, that's not really something I'm too worried about. And the inner is suspended along each side like that. Those clips that tie into the outer and then pegged down. And then again, it's fixed with a loop up the top. But as you can see, there is nice space all the way along there, so there's not going to be any issues with the inner touching the outer. This part of the tent's actually made of canvas, which is really interesting. I'm not sure why they chose to do that, but I like it. Maybe it's to do with the ventilation and breathability of the tent. So you've got a nylon door, and it zips up. And then on this end, you do have this nice curtain. It's not actually fixed in the bottom, it's sort of just drapes and tucks, which is quite nice, quite an old idea. And then loops to hold that back if need be. And I'll just unzip this. There we go, so we take a look inside. It's a two-person, if you will, 4-season high altitude or alpine mountaineering tent. Really, really nice. There's a few tiny little marks, but I've done my best to wash most of it out. And as you can see, it's come up really nicely. Really high bathtub floor, like that is, even by today's standards, that is an extremely high bathtub floor, which I really, really like. Helps to keep out the spin drift. But obviously you shouldn't really have that issue. Inside we actually have 2 sleeping bags that have been to Everest. So these have confirmed to have been at Everest, on Everest. This one is the older of the 2. This one's from the 80s. This is a Black Sagrinix Polar. This was bought from a guy whose dad was, I think he was a major or something in the Gurkhas, and spent a lot of time in Nepal. And then once he retired from the Gurkhas, he went on to climb Everest in the 70s, I believe. Or maybe, I think it was early 80s possibly. But he used this bag on Everest, which was cool. It's really, really old. Sort of canvas. It's double lined, so you can see the baffles here. There's another layer of baffles on the inside there, with a triangular toe box, which is really odd. But it's a canvas outside with a nylon inner. Simple dual cord, there's no inner neck baffle or anything like that, just super simple, basic design, but really, really warm sleeping bag. And then this here is the Mountain Equipment Everest. So this was used on Everest by I believe the previous owner, or the owner before that. Really, really heavyweight, super thick, but sort of semi-modern style sleeping bag, which is why this one would be used for super cold climbs and things. Gore-Tex outer, again, fully waterproof. I've treated this perfect. It's amazing. So it's built-in Gore-Tex outer shell with a Gore-Tex hood here, as you can see here. Mountain Equipment, suppliers to 14 Everest expeditions at this point. Use the old style Gore-Tex, but it does its job. The Everest, which again has this one actually has an internal baffle, a tiny zip, only stretches about that sort of length. But as you can see, it is very, very lofty bag, super warm, super warm. And again, this one's pretty warm, but it's a lot older, so I imagine it's lost a lot of this down. Yeah, inside this tent it's pretty basic. There's not all that many features when you compare it to a modern mountaineering tent. There's no pockets. You just simply have the high bathtub all the way around, and then a single hanging loop in the middle, which is it's still quite nice, does the job. Enough space in here for 2 sleeping bags. The ground sheet is still nice and waterproof, but I will be reproofing that later. And then you've got on this end a single door, so there's no fly net on this end, and a vent up there. Just undo that, and you can see just there, that's the vestibule, which is a pretty good size. And there's the all-season vent. A really nice size vestibule. Quite good space to cook and things. I will say it's a very warm day today, and I've noticed this tent gets incredibly warm, but then it certainly should do. Zippers are still working perfectly. There we go, ultimate equipment. And then you've got snow valances the entire way around the tent with extra guying points on the 4 corners. And I have just tested this, and it is taken to the reproofing really, really well. Of course, this is pre-seam seal tents, or it was the early days, so there is no seam sealant on here. But I read online somewhere that the way they combated that was by using a very specific stitching style, where they kind of fold it in. Whereas, so effectively what happens here is there's a bead or a piece of material that runs the entire length of this folded over stitched fabric, so that gets wet if the water were to come through the stitching here, rather than just beading off. But that's all that gets wet. There, it doesn't drip through or anything like that. But I don't know. I haven't tested it in the rain just yet. But I know with the hose pipe it works well. I do need to get some of that residue off from the nick wax, but that's not a problem. Yeah, really nice tent. It weighs in at 4.5 kilograms, so it's by no means light. It's a reasonably heavy tent. But for 4 season use split between 2 people, that's not bad, considering the V25, I believe, comes in at 5.8 kilograms or 6 kilograms. It says on the bag there's a trail weight of 2.8, 2.9, but not really sure how they got to that. I guess that's as an individual, because that technically will sleep 3 people or 2 people realistically. But yeah, super nice tent. It's not the most spacious of things, but I think it's probably on parallel to the North Face Mountain 25, I believe, or possibly the Trango 2P. So I think it's probably got the same amount of space, and of course this will withstand everything that those tents will. The downside of these old school mountaineering tents is they do rely on those guying lines, so that is something you do have to combat. They're not freestanding structures like the geodesic tents. But I always like to think if they managed back in the day, there's no reason why I can't manage now.